Hi, Sagittarius, Sun and Rising. Welcome to your October 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here, and I have the Sun in Sagittarius. I say this every time I do a Sag video, just to let you know that. And it's also important to note that this is a general forecast. For instance, if you are listening to this and your Sun is in Sag, your rising sign is the ruler of that natal chart. And the natal chart is especially used in predictive astrology. And even that, is going to have so many variations depending on what your degree of rising sign is. For instance, in my chart, my rising sign is a late degree of Taurus. So it really is more in alignment with some of the Gemini transits if I'm going to listen to a general forecast. So it's, it is what it is, because you have to listen to something if you're just listening online. But if you would like personalized transits for your specific natal chart, please check the link below because I offer transits for the upcoming 12 months. I have combination readings that are a special price with natal chart interpretations. I have all kinds of readings. But anyway, what is happening in October? We are going to be having an eclipse in October, and this one is in Scorpio. I'm going to get to that in a little while, but I just want to remind people that Scorpio is a sign before Sag. So on the chart wheel, it's going to be in the 12th house. And so it's a very interesting place to have a solar eclipse or to have a lunar eclipse. But the solar eclipse is a powerful new moon. So there can be new beginnings in the area that the 12th house represents. And like I said, I'm going to talk about that. I like to do things chronologically. On the 2nd of October, we have Mercury going direct. Yay! I'm recording this in almost the third week of September, and it's like I am so ready for Mercury to go direct. I just can feel it. Sometimes I can, sometimes it's not that big of a deal. But this time it is, at least in my estimation for my life. So Mercury's going direct in Virgo because it actually went back from Libra into Virgo. So we look at the progression or regression of Mercury. What houses did it travel through? It started in Libra, which is the 11th house, and it went back into the 10th house. What do those two houses have in common? The 11th house is the house of gains, which means, the money that you make from the business that you own or your career, especially, we would say, because it's the second house from the 10th house. And so if you have been thinking in terms of what you're making, now if you work for yourself, it's going to be unpredictable. You can't predict, well, maybe some people can, but usually your income is unpredictable, and it might not be predictable in a good way. And you might be saying to yourself, when is it going to get better? And so you might have been really just thinking about this and then rethinking things, because when you work for yourself, obviously you don't have that guarantee the way you do if you work for somebody else. So, although, some people who work for others, they still are on a commission. They're not, they have to sell something in order to get paid. So I can't say that 100% of the time. Well, whatever is going on, you might be rethinking things. And now it's in your career sector. And so it can even be thinking what type of career you want to have. Because Sag is a very versatile sign. It's a mutable sign. And I'm not saying that all signs can't do multiple things, but especially with the mutable signs, they are very flexible, so they're open to different things. And Sag is one of those signs. So another thing about the 11th house is it's a house of long-range goals. And what I like to do to differentiate it from the 10th house is say that the 10th house are the career goals and the 11th house are other goals. Because the 10th house is going to be ambitious and therefore goal-oriented. But the 11th house is other things that you want to accomplish, things, the house of hopes and wishes. So things that you wish for, but you know that aren't going to necessarily drop in your lap. They're going to have to, strategize, do something to make them happen. And, it's not just about career. There are other things that are going on in people's lives. But sometimes these goals clash. You may want to live in one part of the country, like I'm using the United States as an example, but your job is in a different place. And so it's like, how do I bring these two things together? Or can they be brought together? So that's what the review of the retrograde might have been about too. And also people networking, 11th house, getting in touch with certain people. Maybe certain people are good or not so good for career matters. And it's like, I'm not going to deal with these people anymore because I don't trust them or what have you. So Mercury goes direct in that 10th house. And then who knows, maybe you start to feel like your career, everything is starting to gel more. Because when there's a retrograde in one of your earth houses, you may feel like you're unearthed or ungrounded, that there's something that isn't flowing the way it normally does. And that can involve money, that can involve, just a feeling of stability in general. On the 8th, Pluto goes direct at 26 degrees of Capricorn, and Pluto has been in Capricorn since January of 2008. Wow, long time, over 14 years. It will be going into Aquarius in March of 2023, and for Sag, this is a house that is this is a sign that is harmonizing with Sag. It's a sextile. And that's the 3rd house. So here we have Pluto in the 2nd house for Sag. Now, what this has done is this has transformed your life as far as money is concerned. Pluto actually can confer wealth to somebody, but of course, you have to look at other factors to see how this is going to manifest because, there might be hard angles to this placement, and then that might stress it out more and make it less flowing in that sense. But at the very least, it creates situations which open up the possibility for someone to make something happen at a deep level, with transformation as the catalyst. In other words, if you ever have read Law of Attraction material, one of the key things that they try to impress upon people is the fact that you have to change your attitude towards money. And a lot of people have fear-based attitudes towards money that really block them from allowing it to come into their life. And don't think that I'm like, sitting here lecturing you because I'm just like living in the lap of luxury. No, it's not like that. But I do, when I think back to 2008 and I think about me now, I think that I have learned a lot. Luckily for me, I haven't had to suffer too much because, but that doesn't mean that, everything has just been peachy keen 100% of the time. For some people, Pluto can mean that you lose everything and then gain it back. Pluto can really, it's like, to me, Pluto should be attached to the Tower card in the tarot because of what it represents. So that idea of like stripping everything away to, force a person to deal with their fears. Yeah, I can totally see that. So anyway, it's going direct. What this has done for the last, I think Pluto retrogrades for 5 months, which it blows my mind because here we are October. Um, that's like, what's the 5 month cycle? Um, April to October is 6 months. So May was 5 months ago. That's crazy. It went so freaking fast that it isn't even funny. But so when a planet like first of all, this is a generational planet, so it's not, we don't look to Pluto for personal traits, but we do look to it for personal influence when it's transiting or residing in the natal chart. And so in this second house, when it's been retrograde for the last 5 months or so, it makes you go inward. And in this area, the second house can also be self-worth. So, let's say that some Sagittarius lost their job or they lost hours and they were making less money or they were making no money. How does that affect your self-esteem? Do you derive your sense of self through the money that you earn, through the things that you have? These kinds of questions are very important because they touch to the heart of ourselves and our true selves. You know what I mean? So it's a spiritual thing. Okay. On the 9th, we have a full moon at 16 degrees of Aries. And so that's a fellow fire sign. So that's nice. Trine energy coming from the 9th. No. Coming from the 5th house. This full moon can be an initiator of sorts because even though the full moon, it has different possibilities. For some of you, you may conceive of a project, a creative project, around this time. It can be very easy for you to be creative when you have a full moon in the 5th house. If you think about creativity, at least I do, I look at it as something spiritual, that you are getting a download. It's not just like this random thing that you're thinking up. It's really like connecting to source energy, in a sense. And the 5th house can be the business that you own, and so this can also be an idea for your business that can help it. Remember I talked about the house of gains. So you have Mercury in that 10th house. So you're thinking about your career and what you want from it. And then you have this going on. As a matter of fact, a day later, Mercury goes into that 11th house again, the house of gains. So I feel like there might be some connection for some of you with these two events. But anyway, I also think, first of all, if you're a woman, the fifth house can be conceiving children. So be aware that the full moon is very fertile energy. I don't know how that would work for a man if it's if it activates your sperm in a better way, in a bigger way. What else can happen? Well, this can be, for love. Sometimes with Sag, we're like buddy buddies with the person that we are crushing on, interested in. So this can be like that dawning of the realization that you are in love with someone. Also to take that relationship. Yeah, like if you're hanging with someone, if you're dating someone, and then you realize that it's much more than that. On the 23rd, we're setting up the Scorpio energy. Venus, the Sun, both go into Scorpio. Now, it blows my mind actually because this begins the season of Scorpio going into that 12th house, which is the month before Sag's solar return. And I was actually thinking about this. I was thinking to myself when I was about to say this, I was saying, no, there must be some mistake. It's too early for that. And it's like, I'm doing a reading for October. It's not too early. We're going to have our birthday before we know it. So when the sun goes into the 12th house, and I would assume these other personal planets, you might start to feel more, even like physically, like you need more rest. You might be more introverted than you typically are. And so honoring what your body needs is always a good idea, but especially at this time because it might be really showing you that you need to slow down in some way. Venus in the 12th may be you working on an artistic project on your own, kind of secretly. Note that this is happening after that full moon in the 5th house, which can connect to creativity. So you might be just trying to do this thing because you don't want to, and you don't want any kind of outer interference or any kind of, you don't want to necessarily unveil it to the public yet. So you're working behind the scenes. On the same day, Saturn goes direct in Aquarius. And this is, for Sag, this is the 3rd house. Now, the 3rd house is the house of communication. It's actually social media these days. Is such a big part of that. But the media in general is 3rd house. So Saturn here, perhaps if you do have an online business, and I think anything business related is 3rd house. And so I can't remember exactly when Saturn went retrograde. I believe it was in May, but it might have been June. Maybe I don't know. July? I don't know. But however long that this has happened, this may have felt to you like there was an invisible block. Because Saturn can do that. Now, even direct, Saturn has that ability. Actually, when Saturn goes retrograde, maybe it was kind of loosening the grip somewhat, but I don't think of it as a necessarily positive development when Saturn is retrograde because it can make a person undisciplined. So, for instance, if you were, for some of you, this may relate to some kind of business venture that you want to start, like an online business, let's say something like that. But perhaps something derailed you and you kind of lost your discipline because Saturn can really establish discipline in the area that it is transiting. So it may have made it so that you were perhaps not as on top of your game as you wanted to be. And now you are ready to kind of get back into that groove again. The third, sometimes Saturn confers duty on a person. So you might have felt for some reason that you had some kind of a duty towards the third house can be a sibling. So if you were taking care of a sibling, maybe your sibling's children, and perhaps this had to do with the summer. Well, at least in the northern hemisphere, that you took the summer off, or the parent was there during the summer, and now you're taking care of their children again, or third house can be aunts and uncles and things like that, and now you're back with that discipline or that sense of duty. And when I say sense of duty, sometimes we do things, we may have differences of opinion with that person, but we still feel obligated, and it's not necessarily in a bad way. And then on the 25th, we have that solar eclipse I was talking about at 2 degrees of Scorpio. And in the 12th house, this can open up your life to things that are connected to the spiritual. And Sag is naturally already connected to that area of life. I would say, you rule the 8th house, Scorpio rules, the 9th house, Scorpio rules the 8th house. So both of these houses can be about the secrets of the universe or the mysteries, the meaning of life for Sag. It's kind of like in a more overt way, whereas Scorpio is more of like the underpinnings, the underlying secrets of the universe. But Sag is like the natural philosopher and the life coach on steroids. We tend to be very positive people. We tend to actually question things in life, which is really being intentional. Even if you're like me and you have the moon in Virgo and you kind of have that skeptical side to yourself, you're still questioning. How many people just take life at face value and they're just on automatic and they just listen to whoever positions themselves as an expert and they just follow blindly and they don't question? How many people do that? I would say the vast majority of people, because it's safer that way. In the sense that, you can pretend that everything is all like, there's no chaos. Everything is just like prefabricated, and you don't have to, there are all these guarantees. As long as you follow the program, you're going to have what you want. And so this is about, I think, actually, it's almost like 0 point in a sense. This is almost at 0 degrees. It's 2 degrees, so it's a very early degree of Scorpio in the 12th house, the womb of creation. So really be intentional. I said intentional about, that's why I said the be, what you want to manifest from 0 point, from before it's actually in that new cycle, beginning with that first house. What kind of things do you want to bring into manifestation? And it might even be more powerful than having a full moon having a new moon in the first house. Especially since this is a solar eclipse, so it's a very powerful new moon. But you may feel compelled to start a spiritual practice, for instance, or something along those lines. On the 28th, Jupiter goes back into Pisces. It had been in Aries, so it was in our 5th house, and now it's going back into the 4th house. And that can be very good for people who are looking for a place to live. Because Jupiter might have you revisiting some kind of possible lucky break, if you will, that has to do with housing issues. And also, I want to note, because Jupiter is such a benefic influence, that it's, even when it's retrograding, it can provide blessings. But this is like revisiting something perhaps that came upon you before, and the timing wasn't right at that point, but maybe now it is. Um, when it retrogrades, it's going to be fairly close to Neptune. Neptune. It's not going to be an exact conjunction or anything like that, but I don't have my ephemeris in front of me, but I'm assuming that Neptune is about 22 degrees of Pisces at that time, maybe 23 degrees or something. And so Neptune has been in this fourth house for about a decade, and this can have a different influences depending on what else is going on in your life. For me, what I want to do, what my intention is living by a body of water by the time this Neptune transit has left the building. And maybe Jupiter can spur that on a little bit. But Jupiter can also, if you are moving, you may move to a bigger place. Maybe it has land, actual land, where you're not sandwiched in between people on either side. Maybe it's something along those lines. So, yeah, something can manifest positively in that sense. On the 29th, Mercury goes into Scorpio. So Mercury goes into that 12th house, and look at the way that you think. It may not be very practical, but it could be very psychic. You could come up with some ingenious ideas. You could feel a little weird, vague anxieties. 12th house is karma, past life memory, recall. Watch your dreams. This is the dream state. So the dream state to me is akin to past life recall anyhow. So all of that stuff is to me connected. Yeah, stuff like that. And also, there was something else that I was thinking about. Now I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, well, that's enough, I guess. On the 30th, Mars goes retrograde, 25 degrees of Gemini. Gemini is the opposite sign of Sag. So that is the 7th house. Mars retrograding in the 7th house. When Mars retrogrades anywhere at any time, look at how you are handling anger, because it tends to make it go inwards. This is the house of committed partnerships, so it's very important not to resent your partner. Some things, when Mars is in the 7th house, it doesn't have to be something negative, although for some people there may be some kind of issue that is causing conflict. But this is not so much as a truce as it is a call to look at your place in the dance. Sometimes we get angry at the other person because they're not doing what we want them to do. But, if we really reframed it and we said to ourselves that we don't own that person and they have their own destiny to fulfill, perhaps we would have a much different attitude, and it would soften that attitude, because there's kind of that aggressive stance that Mars can take, that warrior energy, maybe misplaced in this particular house, which is a house of mediation. But it's also the house of legal affairs, the house of public enemies. So if you know who your haters are, it's interesting because I feel, and having those 12th house things going on at the same time, I think that this can work very nicely. Because really, when you think about it, some of the people that you know in your life that you've always clashed with, they serve a purpose, because sometimes one of the reasons that you clash is because they do not get you whatsoever. And it really solidifies who you know that you are when you deal with such people. And it can actually enhance your own sense of purpose. And if you didn't have these people, who knows if you would have pushed forth with the same kind of gusto. You might not have. You never really know how much they have helped you, in a sense. But even like from the karmic perspective, that's what I was really getting at, is that the 12th house can highlight this, that there's nothing that's happening to us that is, it's all good, let's put it that way. And like if this is a legal matter, it can be about going within and seeing, if, especially if you feel persecuted in some way, of seeing like, what am I doing to myself that is out picturing itself in this situation? Maybe I'm at war with myself because, Mars is that warrior energy. And once I forgive myself, accept myself, all of these enemies, all of this thing is going to fall away. And that's the work of the 12th house, because it's a transcendent house, really, the 12th house. So Mars is going to go direct in January of 2023. So you're going to work with this, whatever this represents to you, for the next several months. Be like the alchemist and take any kind of anger, aggression that you feel like you want to direct it towards the outside world. Don't direct it towards yourself, but turn it into something that take that energy and make it into something positive. And also the 7th house is public relations. So if you've been promoting yourself, you may have to take a step back for whatever reason. And it really helps you to forge a new image of yourself that's based on working on yourself. So rather than promoting yourself, you're working on making yourself like self-improvement in a way that is going to enhance your image with the public. Okay, that's what I have for you, Sag. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.